Here we go then, England hosting Ireland, fourth round of the Six Nations at Twickenham this weekend. And is there a chance, do you think there is a chance that England can beat this iteration of Ireland with how well Andy Farrell's team are playing at the moment? I think when I look ahead to this game, that is the biggest consideration really, the biggest question mark around this match coming up on the weekend. So welcome back to the channel. Comment down below, Ireland fans, England fans and neutrals. Do you think there is a chance? Let me know. Like the video as well and subscribe to the channel. And as I say, welcome back to the channel. Little while, or about a week or so since I last uploaded a video. For those of you that have watched any of the videos over the last few weeks, would have seen I was away. I've been in Australia visiting family. It gets to a point where you just kind of have to stop, really, and let the holiday take care of itself. But we are back ready for the final two weekends of the 2024 Six Nations. And starting with this preview, I'll get onto a bits of the team news in just a moment, but almost, in a sense, it's as big a reflection, I think, of where these two teams currently are, that rather than heavily focusing on the team news and the adjustments and what sort of game we might see, is that question I posed to you right at the start of the video. Quite simply, are England capable of beating this Ireland team? An Ireland team at the moment that are heavy favourites to do back-to-back Grand Slams. I won't get into it in this video, but there's been discussions of are they the best team in the world, etc., compared with England, who have shown what they're trying to do, but I think off the back of a really disappointing defeat in the Calcutta Cup, once again, questions are being asked of where they are. And it's part of the problem I have when I look at this game. I'm going to be at Twickenham on Saturday. I can't wait to be there. It's always a privilege to be at games live, and all Six Nations games are exciting in their own right. But I just really struggle to see how England, at this moment in time, the England we've seen over the first three rounds of this championship, how they're able to beat this Ireland team. Some people point towards the Twickenham factor. I know since the start of the championship, Irish media, pundits have looked towards Twickenham, that it hasn't been an easy place for Ireland to go, even when you look at it a couple of years ago when England had Charlie Ewels red-carded early on. That wasn't a straightforward victory for Ireland, but even factoring in the whole Twickenham home crowd for England, first of all, Twickenham hasn't been that much of a place of success for England recently. I know they beat Wales, but you look at the World Cup warm-ups where they underwhelmed there. It hasn't exactly been somewhere that I think England have produced their best rugby or had an atmosphere that can intimidate opponents. So from that point of view, I don't think that's going to be a big enough factor. And I think even if, I don't know, even if this were Wales, for example, where you would say the atmosphere in Cardiff can be an absolute cauldron, even then I would say the gap between the two teams is too great for England to purely be able to overcome it based upon the atmosphere and based upon having home support. Now, obviously, there's always a chance. No one would have given England much of a chance in the World Cup semi-final against South Africa. They would have expected that game to be one-sided, and it ended up being a one-point defeat in a game which England led for a lot of it. You can always have these one-off games and these one-off moments where you execute a game plan, you perhaps get your opponents on a day where they're not at their best, and you're able to cause an upset. But that's the only thing. Like, it has to be your belief essentially in the improbable, or certainly the very unlikely happening. You have to believe in that, I think, to be able to convince yourself that there is going to be an upset, that England are going to beat Ireland, like to rationalise it. In fact, you look at the fixtures this weekend, and Wales against France, even though France will be the favourites, you can make quite a good case that Wales would be able to win there. France haven't played that well. They could be 3 defeats from 3, even though Wales have lost their games. There's been positive things in there. You could give yourself an argument that Wales will win. And the same with Scotland and Italy. The fact that Italy, of some of the stuff we've seen from them, the fact they almost beat England, they should have beaten France. Scotland have been hit and miss. You can make quite rational arguments. I think the only thing with England and Ireland is almost blind faith that upsets in sport can happen, if that makes sense. So I don't see it happening. I'm intrigued in the comments if any of you could put forward a more rational explanation, because I think in terms of set piece, I think in attack, in terms of defence, just where these two teams are, it's so difficult to look at it. I don't think it's overly negative, but to see how England are currently going to beat Ireland based upon the performances we've seen, essentially. It's not that England don't have good players. England have some great players, but they, probably for the last few years, seem to be less than the sum of their parts, I would argue. But it is still an interesting game. I think it's really intriguing from an England perspective of how they approach it. So this Six Nations, we've had this new defensive system, the blitz defence, new ways in trying to attack, neither of which have been overly convincing. I think the blitz defence at times has looked really good. You can see where they're trying to get with it, and that will take time. Attack, again, you can see what they're trying to do, but it's maybe been less convincing, and it's also been in very short periods in games. But the reason I say the way England approach it is because I expected at Murrayfield against Scotland, England maybe to revert back to more of their kicking strategy that we saw be successful for them, albeit boring, at the World Cup. But we didn't. We saw George Furbank at fullback. We saw an England team that went there trying to attack. And I wonder if that's going to be the same against Ireland. This is a game that on paper you would expect England to revert to a certain type of game plan, to try and drag Ireland down to their level almost, because that might be a way that they could potentially get a foothold in the game. I just wonder whether we are starting to see the evolution, maybe not quite revolution, of Steve Borthwick and this coaching group and this England team, in that they are going to set their stall out. This is how we're trying to play. We're not going to revert back to an arm wrestle or needs must in the way we saw them do for that World Cup campaign. They are looking at things towards the future. Do they continue trying to attack in a similar sort of way as we saw them do against Scotland? Which brings me on to the team news. Says a lot, really, I think, about this game. It's taken me, 6.5 minutes to get onto the team news. Limited rotation for England, which I like. A lot's been spoken about continuity. I think it would be tempting after the Calcutta Cup to make a huge amount of changes. There aren't those. So only a few changes. I think it's the correct call at this moment in time. Emmanuel Faye-Woboso comes in on the wing. I mean, the guy has had an incredible rise, which has been written about quite a lot now, from parts of last season playing for Taunton, I think it was, then getting into the Exeter team, had a great start to the Premiership season, has chosen England over Wales and has made his England debut this Six Nations. We know how good he is as an attacking threat and with ball in hand. We've seen that in the Premiership. We saw it at the end of that Scotland game with the try that he scored coming off his wing, hitting that great line. So excited to see him go, as it gives more attacking threat to that back line. So that's one change. Alex Mitchell then comes back in and George Martin comes into the team as well. One of the most fascinating things, I think, from the England team selection, actually, is George Furbank over Freddie Stewart. So Furbank comes in for Scotland, and some people suggest it ended up being a poor decision because of what England missed with Freddie Stewart under the high ball. Stewart not included at all again. Again, to me, is the reason I suggest that is this the new direction that England are trying to go in and stick with? And I kind of like, again, going back to the continuity and the lack of changes, I like the fact they stuck with Furbank. He seems to have been a guy that has often been thrust into really tough situations in an England shirt and then immediately dropped back out the team after defeats, after performances which maybe could have been better, but in team performances that haven't been great. So I like the fact they're sticking with him in a sense. And I do think that backline, I know some people might opt for a Marcus Smith or a Marcus Smith or a Finn Smith over George Ford at 10. It's starting to possibly take shape in terms of what the backline could look like for a while going forward, and the backline, as I say, in particular with Faye-Woboso, but more generally with more attacking intent that England look to get at this Ireland team. That is absolutely fascinating. In terms of the George Martin coming in, we saw how good he was at the World Cup. We know Steve Borthwick likes him. He adds another line-out option in terms of into that pack. I like it. I'm excited to see how he goes. The matchup against him and Joe McCarthy is fascinating. And the final thing I'll say on the England team news, actually, is Alex Dombrandt. His inclusion back into the England fold is a little bit left field, I feel. And Danny Kerr and Marcus Smith, the Harlequins trio on the bench. I wonder whether that is deliberate. Steve Borthwick has spoken about continuity. He's spoken about cohesion. He's spoken about that being something this team massively lacks. In terms of that 8, 9, 10 combination coming onto the pitch late on for England, are they trying to tap into some of that Harlequins DNA in an England team that is now trying to attack differently? Previously, when we've seen Marcus Smith play or even Danny Kerr come in and Alex Dombrandt as well, you've almost felt like the system they've been playing in has been so different to that which gets the best out of them at Quins. Has Steve Borthwick recognised that? And also, just on Danny Care, 100 caps, phenomenal achievement. His debut was a long, long time ago. He dropped out for a few years under Eddie Jones. He was often the guy behind Ben Youngs. To still get to 100 caps is phenomenal. And Marcus Smith, of course, coming in, having been injured at the start of the Six Nations, but he comes in onto the bench as well. So overall with England, I don't have a huge amount of complaints, in all honesty. I think the thing for England, as it has been for a long time, is about the performance rather than the individual selections, in my opinion. I'll finish it off then with Ireland. A lot of continuity for Ireland as well. Hugo Keenan returns. That's the only change. It is a team packed full of quality. You look at the way they lose James Ryan, and Ian Henderson steps in and comes back into the team. And because they've gone for 6-2 split on the bench, no room for Ringrose. A player of his quality, he would walk into that England centre combination, and he doesn't get into this Ireland team. It is a frighteningly good Ireland team. It is an Ireland team, I don't know if they would have ever come to Twickenham and be such heavy favourites. I saw Jamie Heaslip in the week suggesting Ireland needed to go down to 13 or 14 players for England to have a chance, which from Jamie George and Steve Borthwick's perspective as the team talk before the game, that's the motivation from an England point of view. But you can kind of see what Jamie Heaslip is getting at. This Ireland team, you feel like, and the margins of victory they've had in the Six Nations up to this point points towards the fact they are so much better than every other team. I think, and I go back to what I said earlier in the video, it requires something completely off script. One of those games where form, for whatever reason, goes completely out the window. It's kind of what we saw with England and South Africa in the World Cup semi-final. I would say the conditions helped England quite a lot in the game plan they were trying to execute there. But it requires that sort of almost unfathomable anomaly, I think, to occur for England to be able to beat Ireland this weekend. Am I being overly negative, which is a criticism which often gets sent my way when I talk about England? People say that I'm not backing the team, backing my nation. I try and call things fairly as I see it. I don't think this England team has been playing well. I actually give them quite a lot of credit. I'm not someone that is coming after Steve Borthwick. I'm not someone that is coming after the individual selections and shouting from the rooftops of why isn't X, Y, or Z in the team. I give them time to try and get to where they're trying to go with what they're trying to implement. I just don't see them beating this Ireland side. So that's where I am with it. Let me know, comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that stuff. Give me your predictions for the game at the weekend. Cannot wait to be back at Twickenham for it. I'll see you in the next one.